A Day in the Life of Okello Preska is a video which highlights the lives of many of the people who we work with in Uganda. As you watch this video, look for similarities and differences between Okello Preska and yourself or your children or your grandchildren, between village life in Africa and your own life. You can now pause and take a moment to share and discuss the similarities and differences you noticed. And also answer the question, which of those highlight poverty, the similarities or the differences? The differences are obvious in many, but let me just highlight a few. And I encourage you to pause the video each time questions come up, to think about or even discuss together with the people that you're with before I give the answer. The first difference I want to highlight is that she shares a bed with her grandmother. You can pause now to answer these questions. Her parents have either passed away or more likely they've abandoned her with the grandmother. So you have an orphan and a widow living together. This situation is actually quite common among those in our programs at Good Shepherd's Fold. A grandmother caring for usually more than one grandchild. We also target single mothers of malnourished babies and often of children with special needs, where the father has abandoned them. The second difference I want you to notice is what she does when she gets up. Very first thing is that she goes and fetches water. You can pause to answer these questions now. We don't know how far Preska walks, but we do know that often women and children have to walk as far as 5 kilometers or 3 miles to fetch their water. Think of how far that is from where you are right now. Most people in Uganda get their water from a community tap if they're near a town, or a borehole where they have to pump water from underground, or a spring well like this one where you see our children playing when they were young, or a pit well where you see Eveline fetching water using a bucket, or from surface water, which can be from a pond or a swamp, from a lake, from a river, or even just from rainwater gathered into puddles. A jerry can hold about 20 liters or 5 gallons, which weighs around 20 kilograms or 45 pounds. Now, if you want, you can pause the video now and find something in your house that weighs around that much and try carrying it around on your head. Depending on how far the source of water is and how many people are ahead of you in line, it can take as much as 2 to 5 hours to collect water. According to the World Health Organization, the minimum amount of water a person needs in a day is 2 jerry cans. Preska and her grandmother get far less than they need, 1 jerry can instead of 4 for the 2 of them. The third difference I want you to take note of is how many meals Preska eats in a day. You can pause to answer these questions. You'll notice that she only eats 1 meal a day. For breakfast, all she has is a cup of water. Then she doesn't eat all the way until dinner time. She cooks beans in the pot over the fire, and she grinds corn into flour by hand. This is beans and posho, what they call corn flour, is what most people eat every day. Sometimes they are able to add some greens that they grow from their gardens or some vegetables. Now you'll notice that she has chickens, but often those are just used for special occasions, or more likely they use them to sell for some income. The fourth difference is her school. Please pause to answer these questions. Now we saw that Preska walked to school, and she walked on dirt paths as they don't have roads there. Many children have to walk as far as 10 kilometers or 6 miles to get to school. Think about how far that is from your home. And they have to leave quite early in the morning because school starts in Uganda at around 7 or 8 in the morning. And it goes all the way until 5 or 6 at night. And when in Uganda, the sun sets at around 6:30 or 7. So many children walk home returning in the dark. In a typical classroom, there are 70 to 100 children with just one teacher. And you saw in the video how they have to squeeze onto these desks, 4 children to 1 desk, and they have to share their books and their pencils and pens. Okello Preska is obviously living in poverty. She is barely surviving, let alone thriving. Based on her life, how would you define poverty? You can pause to answer this question. We often think of poverty as a lack of material things, not having money or stuff like a nice house and furniture, many dishes, many clothes, much food, cars or bicycles, books or toys. But poverty, being poor, can include a lot of other things. Many poor people don't have access to services or infrastructure such as electricity, plumbing and sanitation, clean water, trash collection. What other things can you come up with? In addition to having a lack of access to services and infrastructure, many poor people don't have very many opportunities. Many poor people don't have these opportunities to have fun or extra learning activities or to go on vacation. And many poor people don't have job opportunities or very few. Children from poor families don't have opportunity to become what they want to become. They aren't able to change their situation or live to their full potential, and often they remain in poverty when they grow up. But poverty is still even more than all of these things. How do you think Preska and her grandmother feel about themselves and their lives? Yes, in the video you can see her smiling, and that's likely because she's being supported by EduKid, who probably built her house and they cover her school fees. But without that support, and even with that minimum support, how do you think they feel? Many poor people feel ashamed, embarrassed, even humiliated. They feel powerless and inferior. They feel less than human or not part of society. They feel like they can't change their lives. They feel hopeless. And they often feel that God doesn't care and that He's even punishing them. It's quite obvious that our lives are very different from Preska's, and it's easy to focus on those differences which separate us. It's easy to focus on her poverty. You already discussed some of these similarities you have with Preska, but let's think a little deeper about this. The truth is, poverty is much deeper than all the physical and material things Preska and poor people don't have. These are symptoms or the result of what poverty really is all about. Brokenness in the 4 foundational relationships in life. Brokenness in how they view and thus relate to God, self, others, and creation. Brokenness due to sin in the world. When Adam and Eve ate from the fruit, sin entered into and broke their relationships with God, themselves, each other, and creation. We all are poor. Because of the fall, every human being suffers from relational poverty. Poverty of brokenness in their 4 foundational relationships. With God, which can be poverty of spiritual intimacy, with themselves, which is poverty of being, with others, which is poverty of community, and with creation, poverty of stewardship. For some people, like Preska, and in some parts of the world, like Uganda, relational poverty results in material and systemic poverty. When we see our own brokenness in our 4 relationships, we are better able to see our similarities with and thus relate to the poor like Preska. We don't see ourselves as above or superior to them, but more as equally broken and equally in need of help. When we see that we need Jesus to reconcile us with God, ourselves, with others, and with creation, just as much as Preska and everyone else, we are better able to humble ourselves, admit our brokenness, and relate to the poor, like Preska, sharing Jesus with them and growing in Him together. So let me end with these questions. In Isaiah 58 verse 10, it says, "If you spend yourself on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will shine." That light is the light of Jesus. Jesus says, "I am the light of the world." But He also says, "You are the light of the world." In 2 Corinthians 5, verse 18, Paul says, God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he has committed to us the message of reconciliation.